Before we get to the questions, why don't we just do some quick introductions? I've known Ben for a while now, and I know some of you have as well. I just met Jamie a few minutes ago, but if Jamie will start with you, do a quick introduction, and we'll go to them.
Yeah, so I'm Jamie Leverton. I'm the CEO of Hut 8 Mining. For those of you not familiar with our company, we are one of the oldest, largest publicly traded Bitcoin mining companies, headquartered here in Canada. Our largest mining operations are in Alberta, Drumheller and Medicine Hat, and then we also have a traditional data center business. We do high performance computing, which is obviously very hot right now with the AI hype cycle that we're in the middle of. Those data centers are in BC and Ontario, and one of the things that Hut 8 is famous for was being the first public company to hold Bitcoin on balance sheet. So we are very bullish on Bitcoin, continue to be, and certainly very, very bullish on mining and what mining can do, not just within the blockchain ecosystem, but within the energy transition paradigm as well.
Okay, excellent. Thank you, Jamie. And you and I obviously need to talk more after this because we do have a lot of work to do in this space, and I'd like to hear about some of your thoughts on how we can do better as a province to attract this investment. Ben, give us a quick introduction. Although I'm not sure that you need one, but just give us a short one.
Nice to see everyone. So Ben Harper, I'm Associate Director with Luxor Technologies. We're a software and services company, helps mining operations data centers in Canada, in Alberta, all around the globe, from the mining pool side, which is like the spot market for hash rate, which is the commodity that miners are selling. We have a computer hardware desk, we have a firmware desk. I work on the derivative side most of the time, which allows mining operations to smooth out their cash flows, hedge in their revenues, and also allows investors to get that non-physical exposure to the sector. So we really play in all different parts of the space and work with data center operators all over the place, but many of our best partners are in this room and across Alberta.
That's So I love hearing that because before I came to the Texas Consortium on Blockchain, I wouldn't have understood any of that. And now I understood about 15% of it, so I'm making progress. A year from now, I'm going to know everything that you just said. So the first question, there's a lot of misconceptions about blockchain. Okay, we've all heard this. Villains love blockchain. It's not secure, it's not safe. So let's throw this out. How would you best, and we'll start with you, Jamie, how would you best explain the technology process and benefits to a relative newcomer in this space?
Well, one of our chief villains was actually the CEO of BlackRock, Larry Fink. 2017, he said that Bitcoin was used for criminals and money launderers. And he was on live TV day before yesterday, could have even been yesterday, saying that Bitcoin's actually more linked to digital gold, will probably revolutionize the financial industry, and he's in line to probably launch the first spot Bitcoin ETF in the United States. So I think that's a great illustration of that narrative being officially dead. There are a few that will hang on to it, Warren Buffett being one. I would say Warren has incentives to hang on to that narrative, being some of his other investments.
But he doesn't mention Bernie Madoff, though, does he?
He does not. Oh, are we going to talk about Sam? But your original question, I think this is actually a pretty sophisticated audience around blockchain and Bitcoin in particular. But the way I like to talk about mining is really more its relationship with energy, because I think that's the element that is most often missed or misrepresented in media in particular. So when we think about mining, and I'm in a unique position. I come from trad tech. I spent 20 years in traditional infrastructure, data centers, cloud, location managed services, which I now have as part of the Hut 8 portfolio. But the primary difference between a traditional data center and a Bitcoin mining facility is that a traditional data center is a net taker. They will always be a drain on the grid. They are not a flexible load. Conversely, a Bitcoin mine, which is essentially an industrial scaled data center that doesn't have all of the bells and whistles built into security and redundancy that you would see in a traditional data center. And that delta really equates to a difference of about $9 to $11 million per megawatt in CapEx. That's the delta, but ultimately we're all running a bunch of servers. The primary benefit of a Bitcoin mining data center is that it is a flexible load. We have no incentive to mine when power prices are high. which means that's when the grid needs the power. So we act as a stabilizer for the grid. We are also an industry that is doing the most in innovation for carbon capture, methane waste reduction, all directly funded by the industry. None of the work we're doing in driving innovation to take carbon out of the atmosphere requires government funding, subsidies, incentive programs. It is all industry driven because ultimately our number one operating expense is power. We're on a mission to drive the lowest possible cost of power, and that comes from waste sources, renewable sources, and then again, if we're working in conjunction with community and energy, we can help actually bring new energy infrastructure into a community and ensure it goes to the constituents when they need it and is otherwise entirely monetized when they don't.
Okay, thank you, Jamie. Ben, we'll go over to you. Explain to a newcomer the technology, process, and benefits to someone in the space.
Yeah, so, well, I think everybody in this room kind of knows a little bit about mining, but.
Am I the only newcomer in this room? Okay.
The way you generally approach it, right, is like what Jamie said, it's a data center industry. A lot of the initial pushback you get is really on the energy use side of things. And that's usually the best, I think, way to get someone into the space or explain. And that's what got me in the space. You see what's going on, whether it be grid stabilization, whether it be a way to clean up orphan wells, capture flared methane gas. There's all these energy systems and environmental practice things that the flexibility of Bitcoin mining really helps incentivize and bring about. And the message in across Canada and in Alberta, previously before I joined this space, I worked with Minister Nally as a policy advisor in the government. And you look, what are the biggest kind of public policy, social, political challenges in Canada, right? Well, of course, there's jobs. We want to grow the economy and have jobs. That's already happening in this industry. It's happening across the country, but it's particularly a huge problem in rural and remote regions. And what's so interesting about this is I'm in a high-tech sector and we work with miners in Medicine Hat, right? Miners in Grand Prairie and Drumheller. In Lloydminster. Not something you would have expected, but a really amazing part of the industry. You also have the diversification piece, which is a big part of Alberta. And I always say, when people talk diversification, they do it in a qualitative manner, but it sounds unrelated, so it's diversified, right? But what's great about this space is it's energy focused. So a lot of the same skills, the expertise types of companies need to bring in that energy expertise, but when energy prices go down, it's your costs that are falling, not your revenues. And so you have a quantitative diversification mechanism built into the sector that really nicely complements a place like Alberta that's really tied to the price of oil, the price of gas. And then finally, it's the international market access, right? In Alberta, one of our biggest problems is we can't get our energy exports to market. Bitcoin mining, data centers are a way to refine that energy into a compute commodity product and export it over the internet. All you need is an internet connection. And so for a couple of those reasons, I think that's a great way to get, especially people in Alberta, understanding what backs this. A lot of people say, oh, nothing backs it. No, it's backed by energy, it's backed by the people in this room, it's backed by a bunch of really smart companies doing some of the most innovative things that matter.
I think that's the message that we have to get out, though, because a lot of people that are new to the space don't appreciate that there's a smaller carbon footprint involved in digital asset mining, because as you pointed out, you don't have to transport it, right? You don't need to have that conversation between pipelines and trains, right?
Yeah, we often talk about Bitcoin as digital gold, but what it really is at its core is digitized energy. And it's the ability to digitize energy at the source.
I love that branding. Yeah,
I think it works for Alberta.
Yeah,
We can workshop this.
Talia, are you getting all this?
Yeah,
Okay.
is it being recorded?
Oh, is
Yeah,
it?
so while I run around and they take me with my head cut off, believe me, I'm gonna catch it up.
All right, now I hope you didn't shoot all your energy bullets because we've got some more energy questions, because I know this is big to this area. Alberta's energy sector has strong synergies with the digital asset mining industry. What are some examples of projects that show how energy companies, miners, and regional economies can all benefit from working together?
I can lead, and I'm sure Ben can follow. One of the best examples is really what we've done in the city of Medicine Hat, right here in Alberta. So we run a 67 megawatt mine in the city of Medicine Hat. Medicine Hat is also an independent power authority, so they they supply their own power. And before we built our mine there, which was in late 2017, early 2018, most of their power capacity was sitting idle, waiting for peak demand. Because you can't just power natural gas plants on and off at random. So quite often, that power is sitting idle, waiting for the constituents to need it. We came in and set up an arrangement with the City of Medicine Hat and the energy provider, which are all connected. We built our mine directly adjacent to the natural gas plant, and we monetize that energy all the time. We're either mining with it, or if it's a peak demand situation, we give it back to the grid, and we can give it back within minutes at any increment. We can give all 67 megawatts back within minutes and then power back on within minutes. Sometimes they just need 5 megawatts or 10 megawatts, but we're constantly working in conjunction with the constituents, which is the city, and the power provider directly, so that power is always monetized, but being put to where it's needed. The other thing that has done, we brought 30 jobs plus temporary workers when we were in peak demand periods to the City of Medicine Hat. We are now one of the largest revenue providers to the power authority and one of the largest tax providers to the city itself. All of this wouldn't have been possible without a flexible load. If we were just a net taker like a traditional data center, we would be taking from the constituents. They would end up challenged during peak demand periods, or the data center couldn't run effectively. But because mines work the way they do, we have been able to establish almost perfect harmony and monetization for the community.
So I'm fascinated by this, and I'm not sure where everyone is with the electricity grid in Alberta, but we have a free and open market. Medicine Hat is unique in that my description of it is it's like a microgrid within the greater province of Alberta. So I think of it as a microgrid, and you're benefiting that microgrid. And there's options such as plugging into the main Alberta grid, but I'm intrigued by the idea of having more microgrids behind the fence. And I was previously the Associate Minister of Natural Gas and Electricity. And I put forward legislation that would allow for self-supply with export, which is basically what you're doing now. You're producing your own electricity, and then when the costs are high, you're selling it back when there's demand into the market. So how realistic is that for more microgrids within Alberta, where a power generator would create essentially their own microgrid and bring on miners?
Well, I think we've got friends in the room from Texas. Texas is leading the way in how they're working with mining, not just for microgrids, but for ERCOT across the board.
Right.
There are also tons of people in this room that are already taking advantage of stranded oil well sites, stranded nat gas, behind the meter.
Yeah.
I think one of the things that came up with some of us that were having lunch earlier today was just lack of clarity around regulation, a lot of red tape, and actually being able to take that off-grid power and selling it back to the grid to help support the macro grid.
Yeah.
But I mean, really, Texas is leading the way, and Alberta could leapfrog Texas.
Good. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, that I guess that's the on-grid side. On the off-grid side, right, it's the flaring and venting that can be replaced with a data center. And Texas took great lead just this last legislative session in passing some initiatives that Alberta could take a look at. It's also a big orphan well problem in Alberta, and this industry sees orphan wells as a solution, not a problem. And so there's a ton of synergies there.
So is anybody having conversations with the Orphan Well Association right now? Because I've always thought that was the opportunity.
Yes. Somebody mentioned it today.
Yeah?
Who was the lunch? Oh, Big Round. Rick.
Yeah, we're working with a well company that's in contact with the Orphan Well site. We met down in Texas, and you and I had a long conversation about that. So we were talking about putting the first pilot project out there, and we're really close on coming back to you with some ideas.
Oh, good.
We had I had an email back from you as we came back, and Brock and myself and some other people. So, yeah.
I think there's an incredible opportunity. It's a $20 billion liability right now that is a black eye for this province. because we've always been an oil and gas rich province, but we weren't always responsible as we are now, and we have an orphan well problem. But if we could turn that into a solution and use this, because I always thought if we could use it to generate wealth and also use some of that new wealth creation to essentially reclaim the well afterwards, then it's a win-win for Albertans.
Not only does it generate wealth, but it actually cleans up the environment at the same time.
Yeah.
There is no downside.
And some of these wells go back to the 1950s, right? Sitting there abandoned since the 1950s. So yeah, $20 million liability that we have to take care of. We could do what the federal Liberals did. They wrote a check for $1 billion as a work creation to job creation project. So instead of spending $1 billion, right, cleaning them up, we could have put them back to work, right?
Still can.
So still can.
And that was money.
I'm outside of that.
And I think one of the big challenges for the industry and for yourself on the policy front is bringing in all the different regulators, whether it be the AUC, the ADR, ASO, Orphan Well Fund. It's a little bit of a challenge, right, for this industry. A lot of times we're seeing it as blockchain, so we're talking to financial institutions, divisions, and I think Alberta's done a great job on the ASC side, on the custodian side, on the banking side. It's the challenge for data centers is really on the array of bureaucracy and not a clear mandate, a clear checklist for operators. So I think that's kind of the opportunity, but also the challenge.
I mean, how wonderful that you're in charge of red tape reduction.
I know we're going to be talking. Yeah, I know we're going to be talking. I'm aligned. We need to turn this scenario into a solution for all Albertans, and this is the way to do it. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, let's change gears for a little bit. And a favorite topic of mine and many people's is ChatGPT. And when I first found out about ChatGPT, I wanted to find out, is it really that good? And so I remember going to ChatGPT and I said about write a poem that rhymes about a patriotic Albertan and the oil and gas industry, and boom, that's an incredible poem. And then I said, okay, now do it from a Shakespearean perspective, and it was written like in old Elizabethan English, whatever you refer to that as, and it was incredible. And so just last week I was talking to an intern of mine, 18 years old, far smarter than I am, and he used ChatGPT to write some code for him. And I just thought, wow, I wouldn't even know what question to ask to be able to get code out of there. But this is how fast this industry is growing. And so digital asset mining has benefits that extend beyond blockchain technology and the energy industry with the rise of AI and graphic intensive AR. And the world needs to dramatically accelerate its computing power. How can mining help Alberta be a leader in this high demand digital technologies?
You want to go first this time?
I'll go first. So I guess at Luxor, one of our founding principles really is that compute can be a commodity like other commodities. And so what we do, what we're doing on the Luxor side, right, is we see our mining pool, that's a spot market for hash rate, right? But in cloud computing, in AI especially, other spot markets will start to develop as more competitive industries start to play in that space. And the data center operators in the Bitcoin mining space are used to having to be lowest cost operators because they're playing in a commodity space that everybody in Alberta, whether it's agricultural and gas, is very familiar with. And part of what I do is on the forward side of things, where we're building an actual forwards and options market, so you can actually take some of the volatility out of your operations, operate it like other, whether it's electricity or agriculture, oil and gas, like actually build out those commodity compute markets. And on the data center side, which Dana's going to talk a ton about, they'll be the lowest cost operators wherever those spot markets do develop. And then of course what we want to be doing on the Luxor side is building out those financial markets and those software services that help everyone optimize their operations. So I think this is the place you're going to find solutions, just because we are battle hardened by commodity markets and volatile prices.
So on the topic of ChatGPT, you should see the apology note my 12-year-old wrote me. It was real tearjerker. For me, as I highlighted before, I come from trad compute, which is basic, generally GPU compute, CPU compute, and then now I live in the world of Bitcoin mining, which is ASIC-based compute. But at the end of the day, as Ben said, it's all just compute. And I mentioned it earlier, in the Bitcoin mining world, we build infrastructure that will mine a megawatt for anywhere between 400 and 600K USD. whereas a data center costs between 10 and 12 million per megawatt. And that megawatt of Bitcoin mining can come online within 30 to 45 days. It's gonna take me 2.5 years to build out that traditional data center that is needed to support clustered GPUs, which is what drives AI. You can't put AI compute clustered GPUs into a Bitcoin mining site. It is like oil and water. They do not mix. Over time, and why I'm excited and why we're in both spaces is because these worlds will slowly start to converge. They have to. But when I think about AI, and in particular, you talked about ChatGPT and coding. AI's been around a long time, especially in Canada. We had a big hype cycle around AI. I don't remember if you guys remember Element AI. They were the most well-funded private AI startup in the world in 17, 18. We put billions into innovation clusters funded by the federal government. AI was a big one. And then it fizzled. And then all of a sudden, AI got really smart. And it got smart but somewhere between ChatGPT 3 and ChatGPT 4. What they released to the public was ChatGPT 3.5. And the main difference was they injected coding language in that 3.0 version. And once they gave ChatGPT the ability to read code, it made it exponentially smarter. When we think about AI and the problems of AI, we think about things like deepfakes. AI gives you scalable everything except truth. Blockchain gives you scalable truth. It gives you provenance. It gives you identity. The only way AI can reach its greatest potential without creating mass destruction is if you converge it with blockchain and you give it scalable truth and you give it provenance. And that's why these things, by necessity, must converge, both at the application layer and ultimately at the compute layer.
So my goal is that everyone here who's not investing in Alberta in digital asset mining is going to walk away and start talking about how they can do that. And everyone who currently is investing in Alberta in digital asset mining, I'd like them to invest some more. So what is the number one thing that government can do to enable that?
I'm just jumping right in on this one. The government of Alberta is already doing it. You are actively engaging, educating yourselves, being thoughtful, being humble in the work that still has to be done. We're not seeing that from, frankly, any other jurisdiction within Canada right now. The vast majority, if not all now, have mining moratoriums. They're not engaging in thoughtful conversations. They're not trying to work with industry. In the US, we see states like Texas doing really great things. Globally, the UAE is probably leading as far as thoughtful industry-wide innovation, regulation, and ecosystem development. So yeah, my answer is you're doing all of the right things, and it's about figuring out the roadmap to execute and just continuing to have the right conversations with industry, with regulators, and really at all levels. And then ultimately, not to get too much on my soapbox, but we also need to get institutions and education involved. We need the younger generation to be part of these conversations as well. And we need academic research to start to come out to support some of the things we're talking about today. One of the challenges, we all have this great narrative around Bitcoin mining, but there is no peer-reviewed research out there that can help support people like yourself that are coming into this space and want to make sure that the data is the accurate data. And so we do need to work with institutions more aggressively as well.
So we're working with Nate on that exact topic right now.
I can't wait to meet Nate.
We'll meet them soon.
That's good to hear. That's good to hear.
They're education partners.
And also, I'm going to interrupt you. I was actually cringing when I asked that question because I thought, oh, I know what she's going to say. And that was actually a very flattering answer. Well, thank you.
You didn't ask me about the federal environment.
Oh, well, we're aligned on that one. We're aligned on that one.
That's where it gets a little cringy.
We're aligned on that one. Well, I'm glad that's a great answer to hear. Thank you. Appreciate that. Ben, now for review, what is the number one thing that we can do to enable more investment in this space?
I'm just gonna leave it off Jamie. It's to continue to do things like this. You know, I trust that your office is working on this. The consortium is put together, has brought, bring trust in the industry together to put together what needs to be done. But it's about being welcoming for business. And every single metric you look across Alberta, whether it's the taxes, the red tape, which you have a huge part to do with, or the highly skilled workforce, we're ahead of everywhere in the country, and it's unparalleled. So this industry needs Alberta, and Alberta needs this industry.
Absolutely. That's actually a great point. So
I'm using that quote then.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is a very, something, write that down. I'm gonna take the last word, and I'm just gonna put out to one of the best premiers that we've had in this province, who had some vision. That was Premier Lougheed, and Premier Lougheed went and he leaned into the oil sands. And when I say leaned in, that means he subsidized it to some degree, and he created generational wealth by doing that. And there's people that told him to get out of that business, not to make those investments. It was a boondoggle, and he did it. And in the process created generational wealth. And we now remind people of that in the hydrogen space, because this is another important industry. We have an opportunity to create generational wealth in hydrogen, but it requires some leading in, requires some investments. But we're going to do that because it's going to be jobs for Albertans and as I said, generational wealth. But what's really cool about this is the digital asset space is a $1 trillion industry, far bigger than what we've been talking about with hydrogen, oil, and gas. And I haven't had one person ask for a subsidy yet.
No, they're giving away money.
We're not. But the fact is what I hear from this industry is really the government's job is to get out of your way.
Yeah.
And that's something, and you would think that would be easier for government to do, by the way.
Maybe not entirely get out of the way, but help facilitate, because the conversations really need to be happening between government, energy, and miners. So facilitating those conversations would be very, very helpful. But that's really all we need.
And I've had those conversations with Kalia, and they're tough for me to have, because Kalia has said we want more regulation. You said the short firm. I knew you explained it. But when she first said that,
Paraphrasing horribly.
I thought you're talking to the wrong guy. I don't want. But then Kalia explained, we don't want more regulation. We want more engagement from the regulator, and she clarified that. And because it's hard for me to hear, right? Because I want to get rid of regulation, not all of it, but I want to get rid of lots of it and make it easier for you to do business. But part of that is making sure that the regulator is at the table. And so that's something that we're going to do. Did you have a comment?
I have a question and a comment on that.
Yeah.
When can we have a round table with the AER, AUC, oil and gas, and Bitcoin miners?
I was asking that. I was asking that the other day. Minister, when can we
Let's sit down.
get them at
and
the table?
let's straighten matters out.
All right.
And here's the awkwardness, because government doesn't direct the regulator, right? Like we can't make this. So let me ask that question of them. I can't tell them what to do. We can ask them what to do, right? Or ask them to participate. And so I can certainly ask those questions. And
I
I'd
will
be
work
happy
with
to
you
do
to
that.
set up a date for a round table, and we will make invitations.
Yeah, I love it. Because I agree we have to get them to the table. But we, despite everything that I've said about cutting red tape, they still are independent agencies, and we have to respect that.
Well, where we're seeing countries really leapfrog in this space is when government is working with oil and gas and bringing us into the conversation.
We will endeavor to do a better job of that.
We
So,
appreciate it.
Kalia, I am going to hand this back over to you, and thank you to the panelists for.